This episode is brought to you by Riggin' It Gear. So this is the company that Jacob Younger talked about on episode number 9 of our show. And he had done this through hike through the Appalachian Trail. And one of his main goals after finishing the hike was he wanted to start up a company that focused on packs and all sorts of gear for hiking. And so he has started that company. He's got a website for it now, and you can get online and check out what he's done so far. He's got fanny packs available online, and I know there's going to be a lot more stuff coming, being rolled out later. So follow him on Instagram. That's the company is at Riggin' It Gear. That's RIGGINITGEAR. And you can find the company itself, the website and the store at r-i-g.co. Just type that into your browser and you can check it out. So thanks to Jacob Younger. And let's see, we got today's show. We have Kevin Akat on the show. We dive into talks about artificial intelligence. We talk about his entrepreneurial stuff and just kind of go on some tangents as per usual. So I have an insight. It's not really sent in to me per se, but Cole and I had discussed a little bit about maybe pulling some of our favorite researchers or our favorite people and some insights that they have out in the world. So this one comes to you from Sam Harris, and it's from his book called Waking Up right here. It's a great book. I'd recommend reading it. It talks a lot about meditation and just kind of exploring your own mind, which is a cool theme to go along with this podcast because we kind of talk about theory of mind and things like that, and just artificial intelligence and how you can build a human brain and human minds and all sorts of stuff. So anyways, kind of ties in with the theme of the show. But Sam Harris says about meditation, he says, happily, the benefits of training in meditation arrive long before mastery does. So I know a big issue with a lot of people with meditation is it's just super boring. You know, you feel like you're not doing it right. You're wasting your time. But really, you get the effects of meditating. You get the positive effects from that, like reduced stress, like, greater attention span throughout the day, and just, feeling overall better about yourself. You kind of get that before you're like a meditation master. And, I'm not even sure what qualifies someone as a meditation master, but I think it's definitely worth trying to do meditation, even if you're a little discouraged by it, and look into it a little bit more and see if it's something that you think would be a benefit to your life. So anyways, without further delay, I'm going to get Kevin on the show here and enjoy it. Welcome to Insights of All Trades with Cole and Nick. This is where we talk to people we meet along our journeys through medicine, military service, sports, education, and beyond. We hope you enjoy. All right, Kevin Akat, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I guess I came here, so yeah. Thanks for hosting me here.
Yeah, it's beautiful out here. It's pretty, in nature and stuff, so.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, where's it, Penfield?
Penfield, Pennsylvania.
Okay, yeah. Penfield, Pennsylvania. And you're kind of in between right now. You're coming back from New York City.
Yep.
And you're about to head out to Miami, you said, right?
Yep. I've got a bunch of family stuff I need to take care of.
Okay.
And then just had a business that I was a part owner of. It tanked. Unforeseen circumstances. And I'm in the middle of a career change right now. I'm exploring that, going out of Miami. I got family down there as well. And just kind of seeing what's next.
Yeah, so. Nice. Sounds good. So you're coming from New York City you had a business in laundry store, it was called?
Yeah.
Right? So talk about that a little bit.
Okay. So that was the most recent thing. So backtrack a little bit, also ties into how we met.
Right.
Was back in February of 2017, I believe it was. We had a house fire. I was living in Astoria, Queens at the time. It's a beautiful neighborhood. We were getting a sweet deal on rent. And then just shit went on fire. And I hopped around to a bunch of Airbnbs for a while, hotels. And then finally, I was like, you know what? I was at like 12 or 13 different places over the course of 2 months. It was way too much. Had to put all my stuff in storage. And then I was like, let me just find the cheap place, just sit for the summer, figure out what I need to do next. Because, I was actually applying for jobs during that time. And I was interviewing during that time. And then I saw the Penn State. My dad lived, Penfield's about an hour from State College. He's living over here at the time. He still has it, but he doesn't live here as much anymore. And Then I saw the listing by Gabby. We roommated for maybe 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, something like that.
And then we kept in touch ever since.
Yeah.
And it was weird because I was actually expected to stay until August and then go back to New York City. But then, this guy Nick reached out to me to run the laundry store. And I was kind of like iffy about it. The pay was almost nothing, but obviously I was going to get a substantial amount of equity. I thought it was a cool concept. It's laundry and dry cleaning. So basically 24-hour service for your laundry and dry cleaning. You could just put your clothes in these lockers. We have 40 lockers and a kiosk, a public kiosk who's located in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. You walk in, 24 hours. You don't have to worry about the dry cleaning, the laundry closing. You put your clothes in the locker. You lock it up. We pick it up. We get it cleaned, deliver it to you. It doesn't have to be the same locker you dropped it in. And we're going to text you when it's ready. Mm-hmm. Your clothes are in this locker, and here's the code to get it. It's like Amazon Locker, but for your laundry and your dry cleaning. And I worked for another company called Dash Locker about 6 years ago, and it was the same concept. And we were like the 8th locker company in New York City, and they all failed. I've only been a part of 2 of them, but they've succeeded everywhere else except for New York. There's 700 locker locations in San Francisco. There's a couple hundred in Chicago, but for some reason, New York is a really, really tough market. So I ran that for about 2 years. Actually, we did grow. The one thing we got was customers. The one thing we got was that customers loved it. It was more just issues with the property management company. We had our retail kiosk. Also, for me personally, I was living off savings. That was running low. And also, I think personal life decisions played a role too. Because once we had lost the retail location because...
Just watch the table, sorry.
Oh, sorry, the tables. Yeah. See, I'm talking about the heads. We had this retail location, Williamsburg, Brooklyn, prime location. We lost it. Long story. We became a pickup and delivery company as a pivot to then try and get the lockers. Actually, the goal was to get them in high-rise structures. I mean, just imagine you live in a nice building. You could just throw your clothes in the locker on your way out from work. I mean, nothing more convenient than that. And so you could also put them in public locations. You could put them in basically parking garages, anywhere you could think of. You could even put them in like large complexes where there's common areas. So that was the goal. Ultimately, I think I was kind of running myself pretty low in terms of energy, financially, everything else. A couple of other ownership dilemmas, I would say, as well, with the actual how we proceed. I was set to take over the actual company, like the majority, and terms weren't exactly maybe what I would want. So that played a role. I mean, everything kind of played a role. Ultimately, what I kind of realized was I don't think we could have succeeded long-term with the lockers because we actually shipped, when someone dropped off laundry, someone dropped off dry cleaning, we shipped it out to a third-party vendor. We were all green clean. It was all green clean type stuff, but we had to pay them, 50%, give or take. And if you owned your own dry cleaning plant, you always had the margin advantage. You're probably making 80 to 90%. So basically what would happen is, and it already happened. Because we were talking with those same people. They owned a dry cleaning plant up in Queens, and they were going to go into the locker business. How do we compete with that? I mean, they're going to have lower prices. They're going to have faster turnaround. They own the process. So the locker business, and you can see this in all the other cities, it turned out that they wound up owning their own plants. So I don't know. I mean, overall, I as I've been talking with you, I have other passions as well that I wanted to start exploring, and maybe even a whole career change. So
right. And we can get into that in a little bit. I kind of want to just get a little bit more of a feel from this laundry business you were in. So this wasn't your first time being in a, like a businessman role, even in the locker business there. So what kind of goes through your head towards the end where you realize you kind of got to get out of it and it's time to move on to something bigger? Yeah. Like where do you kind of, I don't know whether it's cut your losses or just like kind of understand that it's time to, like, what goes through your head and what kind of stuff?
That's a good question. I mean, it's definitely a confounding. It's multiple variables, but I'd say one thing is it stops becoming fun. Like, I think I enjoyed it when I was doing it, and as the more variables that seemed not under my control, the more it was less fun. It became more of a drag. And I won't get into it, but my commute became much longer because I had to move while I was over in New York. So that was less fun. It was less local. And yeah, I would just say that I had to jump onto the lease for the retail business that we doubled in sales over 2 years. And they were giving me a hard time because even though I was a part owner, it was under Nick's name, my partner. And since he was basically pulling out for the most part, they were giving us a lot of hassle with that. And then we ultimately lost it. And so it just it stopped becoming fun. And it became more like it didn't feel like, okay, this is exciting. We can grow this. It's how do we save this? But I felt like how do we save this for 2 years? Mm-hmm. I mean, I literally jumped on a bus. You remember this? And the company was 3 days from failing. If I did not come out that weekend, there would be no laundry store because that's the state of the business I took over. And I worked and clawed. And I think at the end of the day, when you realize your upside isn't what you think it is, that's when you're like, all right, well, what the hell am I doing this? So the part of the fun is the hope. You need hope, right? If there's no hope, then in terms of your upside, it's limited. Then you're like, well, I'm sacrificing all this money and time and stress and everything else. And you're like, well, you start to reevaluate. You say, well, what would make me happy doing something like 80 hours a week, 70 hours a week? If you look at all the top people in the world and what they do, they always say it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like work. Kobe Bryant, one of the best basketball players ever. He loved it. He loved doing all the work, even though some of it sucked. So, it's like I didn't feel that way about this business. I think a good example is, did you ever see The Office?
Yeah.
Okay, there's one episode where Pam asked Jim to talk. Pam's parents are about to get divorced, and she wants Jim to talk to Pam's father about, try to talk him into staying with her. And then it turns out that Jim actually talked him into divorcing her. It's because Jim said that when she walks into a room, I love her and she's my whole world. And it's that same idea that you just kind of sit and go, wait a minute, I don't feel that way about this. And you don't have those feelings of like, oh, I can get up every day and I want to do this.
Yeah. So how do you go about finding that thing that is going to make you?
I'm in the process right now.
Okay.
And I think I think I have to work on, I think it's a lesson in self-discovery. Anyone wants to help me out, let me know.
Right.
But I think for me, even at 31 years old, I don't think it stops. I think some people, I'm always jealous of people who figure it out at 16 years old. There was one of my best friends in high school, his sister was 16 years old. She already knew she wanted to be a hairstylist. I was like, screw you. Like, how the hell did you know you wanted to do that at 16? Some people know they want to be actors. Like, I think I have the entrepreneurial bug. I also think that I maybe want something a little more as well. And I'm trying to figure out exactly what that is. And I think for me, if I had to try and guess at what I need to do, I think I need to cancel out a lot of the noise and get to like a true sense of self. Is that meditation? Is that and pay attention to, oh, that feels good. This feels right. Like you meet a girl you like. She seems nice, and you don't really overthink it. It's just like this seems so. Or I don't like her, right? It's just it's like it's almost like this little guy talking in your head, and like how do you stop him and just like be and just this seems right. You don't overthink it, and I think that's Kobe Bryant picks up a basketball. He's like, I like this, just does. He doesn't really think about it. He doesn't go, oh, I like the way the ball is orange, and I like the way that he just feels right. So like I'm working on how do I get to that point.
So what do you think is different in those people that know from such a young age what they want to do? Do you think they truly know that's like their passion, or do you think it's they kind of pushed into that direction, or they saw something that made them think they wanted to do that, and then now they're stuck in that? Or do you think people are out there that truly enjoy that and like don't go through like a big change in their 20s as far as what they want to do?
Yeah. I think those people, if I had to wager a guess, I would say the people that find out what they want to do early are better at sort of the little voice in your head that's constantly overthinking things. I think they didn't overthink that. They just like, this feels good.
Just like, okay, I like hairstyling.
And they didn't overthink about, well, this, well, that. They just like, for whatever reason, they were able to say, I like doing this and I want to do more of it. I do think I do think like where you grow up and your parental environment, your school environment, these kinds of things play a role because then you could be pushed in that direction. I mean, as a 10-year-old kid, it's easy to get distracted. But if you have a parent who's around and says do more of this, I mean, my parents did. I just don't think I ever found out what I like to do. Although I was fussing around with computers at 12. I mean, I was building HTML websites at 12. I was opening my parents' computer, installing CD burners. So, like, I kind of think this was the year 2000. So I'm kind of thinking, like, maybe I should have done that. At the time, though, it wasn't like computers were everywhere. We had one computer for the family.
Yeah.
And cable was just starting. Like, it wasn't that accessible yet. Sorry, to go back to the question, I think it's just a matter of who can tune out the little guy in the head. I think it's also environment that can push you in that direction.
That sounds about right to me. So kind of like going back again to the laundry storage stuff, and you said you kind of came and took over this somewhat failing business that was almost,
somewhat's an understatement.
Yeah, right. So you take over this failing business, and you said you've worked and clawed your way to get it back on its feet.
Oh yeah.
What kind of stuff did you do to get it back on its feet? Is that a lot of marketing? Is that a lot of what is it?
So
a lot of innovation?
There's like I was talking about it earlier. The stuff that didn't go right that I felt like I lost control over. I feel like what I'm about to say is the single biggest mistake I made, and you touched on it with the marketing and that kind of thing. And it was an absolute disaster. There was no process. There was nobody running it. When I got, literally, people were like, "Where the hell are my clothes?" And I had to like go get them their clothes. Actually, my first day was on my birthday. It was June 30th, 2007. The technical was supposed to start in July, but they needed me. They needed me. So for the first 6 months, I knew like I have to like really like we didn't even have a driver. I didn't have anything. I had to find a driver, fix up the operations.
So what's how did this get to this point?
The guy Nick, he started the laundry store 2 years before, or 2 or 3 years before I even got there. And he's an executive, or he's pretty high up in a liquor company. He does venture. He finds new beer. What do you call them? Breweries and distilleries, and he works with different startups that do beer type stuff and alcohol type stuff. And so this is like a part-time thing for me. He had some money. He had saw the opportunity. I think he thought of it more as like an ATM type thing where like it would be very like residual type income. Like he wouldn't have to put that much into it. Turns out in the laundry business, even though it's locker based, it's a shit ton of work. And so he realized that eventually pretty quickly. He partnered with a laundromat. Now the laundromat was based in it was close to downtown, Park Slope, Brooklyn. And the guy who ran it he ran the laundromat, took a stake in the laundry store, and then like did all the deliveries, did all the wash and fold, and would bring the clothes. You have to like tag clothes so you could track them in the dry cleaning. He did everything. When that guy decided to sell his laundry business, there was no one to run it anymore. So there's like the laundromat still exists, but the guy who's running it and doing all the work, just like I'm retiring. And so that's where he wound up.
And then that's when you come in.
Yeah, and he tried hiring a few other people. They sucked. That's when I came in. I sucked a little less. So I had to fix up the operations. And I think where I really goofed was that I helped my driver out a little too much. I should have made him be more independent. I should have really focused on growing the business faster. Look, by the time we finished up, we were doubled in sales in over 2 years, but really we need to double sales over a year. And really I should have been figuring out how to get these lockers in more locations. And I did some of that, but not consistently because it was always, I did everything. I did customer service. I ran the whole kiosk. I helped the driver with the operations. When the driver wasn't there, I still had to do extra stuff myself. I had to transport bags to and from the dry cleaners. It was a lot.
So you're doing a lot of groundwork too.
Yes, and that's where I goofed, is that I never removed myself. For any entrepreneurs listening, or want to be, they want to go into entrepreneurship. Like I saw, it was an article written by one of the founders of a company called Hello Alfred. And she said something quite brilliant, something along the lines of, you got to constantly fire yourself out of roles. And I didn't really read this until afterwards, but I kind of really appreciated it. It was because I had the experience of not firing myself from these ground level operations. Okay, how can I automate this? Can I use a machine? Can I use another driver? Can I how can I spend a little money even if it hurts us? Because that's the thing, we were losing money every month, but we had a little bit of savings at the time. I should have really made better use of that and figure, okay, how do I fire myself from helping the driver so he can be independent? How do I fire myself from every day having to go back and forth between the dry cleaners and focus on the things that A, I'm good at, B, that drives the most value for the company. And so constantly firing myself so I can take on more and more high-level tasks. And that's the one thing that I think I didn't do well. So hopefully that answers the question too of, what did I do?
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of everything. But
yeah, nice. So you met this guy through what, like LinkedIn or something?
Yeah, he messaged me on LinkedIn.
Okay, so then how do you go about beating out these other people that are applying for the job? Because I remember talking to you off the air before. You're kind of saying that, maybe your resume wasn't the strongest thing around there just from previous experience and stuff, but you feel like if you had a shot with an interview with the CEO or something, you can get that job.
Yeah.
So what goes behind that?
So, well, to be very transparent about that particular opportunity, I highly, highly, highly doubt that there was anybody that was. I had already worked with another locker dry cleaning company in New York City. How many people have really done that? Number one. Number two, I was paying myself not a lot. That's just what was available. I mean, how many people can basically live off their savings and have worked with a New York City-based laundry? I was the only guy.
Okay, yeah.
But just being
Fair
clear,
enough, yeah.
and he never misled me. Like, it was pretty clear. Like, he's like, yeah, I don't have anybody else. I'm shutting down if you don't come. He was pretty. He's like, I know. He's like, I'm going to lose money. Blah blah blah. So there was never any doubt. In terms of why I don't shine as much with recruiters as I do with, say, a CEO or like an executive, like you were saying. And this is for anyone who's hopped around a lot. So in my 20s, I'm 31 now. I hopped around, year and a half consulting, 3 months here, 6 months there, a year, 2 years there, right? So I hopped around a lot. And there's a weakness to recruiters. If you think about the nature of what a recruiter does, they are accountable for having objective measure. They have to have objective measures to justify why they hired this person. So if you have a specific role with a specific task, let's just say it's digital marketing, specifically with Google and Facebook ads. Well, to justify to the CEO or your boss why you hired the person you did, well, say they had 8 years doing just Facebook ads and Google ads. Well, why would you not, hire that person? Versus me, I did it for maybe 4 months. So, like, if I don't work out, the recruiter's going to look very dumb. They're going to be like, well, why'd you hire him? Well, I thought he had great potential. He was smart. So they can't go by subjective opinion. They have to have objective measures. So if you're the type that's done one thing for 8 years, 10 years, go to the recruiters. They're going to love you. But if you are the type like me who's jumped around and worked in a lot of different companies and jumped, also it doesn't help that some companies only work for 6 months, 3 months and did consulting. So it's kind of wishy-washy. That's sort of the entrepreneur in me too, a little distracted as well. But you go to the CEO because you're gonna resonate more with them. You're probably more of an entrepreneurial thinker. You're able to think higher level, probably like you do. So you're probably going to have some resonance if you can think the same way that they do, and say, hey, rather than saying this is my experience, communicate the value you provide to them, right? So recruiters are looking for, how does this match? I have a list of bullet points that I want. How did your past experience match with that? Entrepreneurs and CEOs are more interested in the actual value because they don't really have to answer to a boss. They just want to know, how are you going to make me money? How are you going to deliver me value? So I had an Elance profile. You heard of Elance, Upwork?
I haven't.
So it's where that you can hire freelance professionals. Like if you need a marketing guy, a sound guy, a programmer, any freelancer. It's what Upwork's the biggest freelancing platform in the world. I did that for a year and a half, and I got a bunch of business on there. This was about 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I lose track, but I was about 25. And so when I had my profile, there's hundreds of marketing professionals, and when most of the people that are reaching out to me are usually CEOs, small startup business owners, and it was amazing to me. They're all marketing types, and they'd say as the headliner of their Elance Upwork profile, marketing professional, social media marketing professional. They talked about what they did. That's maybe what a recruiter wants to see is job function, but what a CEO or a top line decision maker doesn't have to answer to anybody else. They want to see value. So I put something along the lines of proven track record of user/customer generation. That's not marketing. That's here's what I could. It's not what I do. It's what I do for you. So with these CEOs and these executives, it's what I can do for you. So I talk less about the experience and more about, hey, I looked at your business. Here's maybe ways you can get more customers. Here's ideas for how you can implement them. And here's how much maybe it would cost. Like, show them you think it through. And usually that works out for me pretty well.
So it seems like you have a pretty good grasp of the entrepreneurial way of doing everything.
Sure.
Is this coming from like your undergraduate degree, or where did you learn all of this stuff? Is it all just stuff you picked up over the years?
It's a very hodgepodge type way of acquiring the information. I did do the entrepreneurship program at the University of Arizona. I started the entrepreneurship club over there too. I had a tutoring business for 2 years while I was over there. So, started there. I tried going into music tech, building my own website, and that didn't quite work out. But I did have to go through I learned a lot from that, even though it didn't really get off the ground. We had like a website built and stuff. But
it seems like you can learn a lot from just these little experiments.
Yes.
That, even if they don't work out.
Yes.
You just take home
100%. And then you're working at startups as well. I worked at Level Up. I worked at a company called Naked Pizza for 3 months. I worked with startups for about 1.5 years doing consulting, a company called Live Ace, another company called Switch Pitch. I did Dash Locker, I Pipestream. These are all startup types. You start, and then also I think you derive this from knowing me. I'm an active learner. I'm always reading articles. I'm not reading full books necessarily. I'm always reading articles. I'm always watching YouTube videos. When I eat, every single time I eat, I'm either listening or watching to one of two things: sports type stuff. Well, whether it's sports, live sports, or a podcast about sports, or I'm learning something about artificial intelligence, learning something about business, entrepreneurship, things I'm interested in. So I'm picking up all these things from different places.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. So artificial intelligence.
Nice.
That was a good little segue there, I guess. I'm super interested in it, but I feel like I don't know much about it. And I know you'll send me stuff all the time, check this out, and I'll listen to it and I'll figure it out. But
okay.
I feel like I don't have quite
you don't
the right
grasp
gears
it well?
running. Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Let's see. So you're thinking about trying to switch into that kind of career field, right?
Yeah.
More like computing and artificial intelligence type stuff. So is that all stemming from a hobby of yours, or is that stuff from undergrad that you got into, or, where's that coming from, first of all? Just something you enjoy?
So this goes back to what you asked me first, was how do you know it's something you want to do? I've been hashing out this kind of crazy idea that I won't get too much into it, but I think getting to know who I am as a person, there's some people who strive to be likable. They're in sales always. And so that's great for them. They want to be liked. And that's and I don't care about being liked. I know that sounds weird, but I don't on a primal level. Yeah. But outside of basic level being liked, not hated, right? I'm after truth. So I'm the type of guy that might say something that's inappropriate but the reason why I might say that is because I genuinely believe that's the honest truth. Even if it hurts a little bit, maybe recent years I've become more empathetic towards maybe how people feel, but and realizing that empathy is a form of truth. You're learning a truth about somebody else. So it's really going after truth. And I think artificial intelligence is going after truth. I don't know that much about artificial intelligence, but I can kind of tell you what I know about it, where it's headed. Basically, artificial intelligence is mimicking using computers and algorithms to mimic human behavior. You have computer vision, that's what they're using with self-driving cars. You have natural language processing. That's what they're using in Alexa. And then a subset of that, something called machine learning. That's basically very statistic driven. So it's a form of artificial intelligence. It's stuff like regression. You're finding patterns. And now that this is the part that I don't know as much, but now that the technology is where it's at, you can start doing more sophisticated things with big data. The bigger the data sets, the more you can use statistical algorithms and machine learning to draw conclusions from that. And so then there's a subset of that that's called deep learning, which uses neural networks. What do you call them? Artificial neural networks. It's supposed to be based off how the brain works. It's not really. You would know that better than I, but it's mimicking. It's crazy. There's this. I'm going to highlight a good example for you. Back in 1997, there was something called Deep Blue. It was built by IBM, and it beat the world's best chess player. At the time, that was considered revolutionary. I think that was just basic machine learning. I'm not 100%. You may want to look that up, but it was just they were using past, like humans were training. This is the key. They were training Deep Blue the best human strategies for beating this person. So it's sort of like supervised learning.
So why is it that we're always trying to make them as human-like as possible? Is it just because we're narcissistic and think that that's the best? Like, if we can get the best human version of this thing, then it's going to be the best. Or are we hoping that if they can get to the best level that a human can get to, that they can get beyond that as well?
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to answer that question, but through the sort of timeline I was working through, because that probably will highlight some questions. But I will sort of tease it and say that I think that trying to be just human is maybe like if you're trying to make it exactly like a human, I'm not sure that's the best goal. I think what you want to do is try to take what do humans do very well, and then what do computers do very well, and how do you merge them? That's what I think should be doing. I think the ones that like are really getting it. I mean, I think that they fundamentally understand that. I think the ones that think, oh, let's try to recreate what humans do well. We do a lot of things really shitty. Like we can't remember more than, I think the magic number is 7. Like remember, that's why phone numbers are 7 digits. It's because for whatever reason, neuroscience has basically said that 7 bits of information is like what the human can optimally remember before they start forgetting. It has a plus or minus 3. It's a book called, what the hell is it called? It's about the memory palace, and the guy wins a world memory championship, and he talks about how plus or minus 3 is the 4 to 10 digits. After that, you're screwed. So we're terrible working memory. So why would we want to recreate human working memory in a computer?
Right.
We'd want to use what humans do well, which I'm about to get into, and combine that with what machines do well, which is working memory, calculations, and things like that. So you have this 1997 Deep Blue computer beats the world chess champion. Now the key is humans had to train it. So there's bias in that too. So there's a narcissism in assuming that we have the best strategies for chess. What if humans are not really capable of deriving the best strategy for chess? So you fast forward to I believe it's 2016, and a company called
That's a big jump, 20 years.
Yeah, about 20 years. Because a lot of the stuff died for about 20 years.
Really?
Not died, but
Why is that?
I don't know.
Just hit a wall, maybe?
I don't know. That's something I don't know. I would just guess that the processing power wasn't there. Not really sure. What does it say? Oh, so yeah, you see, you have IBM Watson, but you hit sort of an interesting time where have you ever heard of the game Go? It's called Go.
I haven't. No.
It's a 1,000-year-old game. It's supposed to be more complex than chess. It's more like it relies more on intuition, more on almost human perceptual type tasks. So you're starting to get into some really interesting territory where it's like not just straight, oh, I got to go get the king. There's so much more strategy that you would assume, oh, a computer can never do this. I don't know the name, the word. Sorry, I don't know how Go works, but that's the general gist of it. From what I've read, is that it just relies more on human intuition, recognizing patterns that a computer may not naturally recognize. That we can recognize instantly. Like, I mean, if you think about someone smiling, right? Computer vision right now might say, "Oh, that person's happy," but we can kind of sense sarcasm in the smile. That nuance that for us is instant, but for a computer is like very hard.
So how do you train that computer? You just got to keep dumping information at it, and you dump these like sarcastic smiles at it, and like
I mean that's and actually the deep learning, they now have methods that can train themselves. So this is what I was getting to. Is deep learning is now the most current iteration. It's a subset of machine learning, and the subset of machine learning is deep learning. And what's so unique is that this game Go, I believe it was, beat the world's best Go player in 2016. Still using human-trained machine learning, beat it 3 times in a row. Then they created a one based on deep learning, and that one was even better. Then 8 months later, this newer version of AlphaGo beat the previous version. It's playing against itself, and it beat the form. So there's basically 3 versions. The best one beat 3-0, the best Go player in the world. The next version was, I don't know, 8 months later, something like that. That beat the crap out of the previous one. Then about 8 months or a year later, 2017, 2018, whatever it was, beat the most previous version 100-0, dominated. So what's so unique about it is that this most recent version it's called AlphaGo 0, and then AlphaGo. I forget the names of which iteration, but the most recent iteration, they didn't give it any data, none. So what they did is they defined a goal. They said this is the goal, is to basically get the other human player out, and they gave it the rules of the game, and that's it. That's it. Just gave it the rules of the game and said figure it out.
So how does that work?
So here's the best of my knowledge. Here's how it works. Again, not an expert in this stuff. This is something I would like to learn more about. But you basically have, so you do have to define the goal. And the computer is basically playing against itself. And it's finding out strategies that work. So it could play against itself a million times over. If you ask me what do computers do well, is that they could do that very quickly. And what's so interesting is that when it was playing, the most recent iteration of AlphaGo 0 was playing against itself. Playing against a human player. It made a move that didn't seem very smart, like a novice would do. And the champion Go player was like, "That's dumb." And it turns out that the freaking algorithm had it planned out about 40 moves in advance or whatever. It seemed stupid. It was actually the optimal strategy. So much of this is about optimization. And I mean, if you can make 300 moves in a Go game or whatever, right? I mean, there's almost an endless number of possibilities where you can move your pieces, kind of like a chessboard, right? You could go turn 1 here, turn 2 there. And it's, of course, based on what the other person does too. But humans cannot possibly calculate what's optimal for 20, 30 moves in a game. And so what's so unique about deep learning is that it's using algorithms that are able to, like, think of it this way. You see a room, right? You go, well, the vibe is not good in here, or that seems fishy. Like, whatever reason, we have these like little nuanced context type clues that we can almost drown out all the noise. Like, if you think about what's really in a room, there's tables, there's chairs, there's people, there's, if you were to look at it from a pure data standpoint of like how much data is actually in a room, and if you were to encode it somehow in a 3D virtual environment, probably petabytes of data. But like current, machine learning algorithms are probably just parsing through a lot of this stuff, whereas deep learning is somehow able to focus on what's important. And that's what humans do very well, is we could just like almost cancel out the noise, the brain cancel out the noise and focus on this one thing. And they use artificial neural networks. And from my understanding, there's a input layer where you put in, you have to put in all your input variables. So if you use a face, for example, and this is kind of what you and I were talking about through text message. If you think about a face, it can be broken down into different components. You got a nose, you got eyes. The eyes have the whites. There's either blue or brown in the middle. It's like even a little black spot. You got eyebrows. So like what you're looking for is differences in color gradient, and you're looking to spot those different contours, the differences, and that's how it works. And so it's gonna, at the first layer, it's gonna start grouping them based on RGB pixel values. So like you're gonna have a bunch of brown pixel values so it's gonna identify a piece of an eyebrow at the first level of activation layers. And another sort of activation node, these are nodes, might say, okay, one nostril or half your lip, right? And then those connect to a increasingly more sort of holistic. So it's going from specific to holistic. It's sort of the mode of direction. Then the next mode, level of nodes in the abstraction layer, you might then have, okay, all these ones. So this nostril plus the node for this nostril plus the nose bone, that makes up a nose. This part of the lip plus this part of the lip, okay, this makes up a lip. And so it's basically piecing together smaller and smaller pieces into bigger pieces. And then eventually you're saying, okay, this nose plus this eye makes up this part of the face. And it keeps going until you get a face. And if it's wrong, it can then teach itself saying, no, this is not a face. This is actually, it might predict that it's a dog. And then it's something called backpropagation, which gives feedback all the way in the other direction. It reweights the connections between the different forms of, higher levels of abstraction down to very specific RGB values. And in the middle, those activation layers, you only know the input layers, you only know the output layer. You do not know everything. It's called the black box. You don't know what's going inside of the hood. So I'm still learning about the stuff. I tried explaining the best I could, but that's how it's training itself. And so it comes down to the algorithms that you're writing and probably processing power as well.
So what do you think the goal of artificial intelligence is for us? Just to do you think it's going to solve world problems? Do you think it's going to just make life easier? Or do you think that there's something that we don't know about it that maybe it overruns humans or something like that. You know what I mean?
It's
That's always a thought that people have is, where's this going?
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like a natural progression of. It almost feels like evolution in a weird way. Ray Kurzweil talks a lot about this. He talks about how human, how evolution has been inherently an exponential type deal. That he talks about how we're at the cusp of that. Like, if it's an exponential curve, it might seem linear, and then you have an influx point where it just explodes. And so he has. I mean, you can go YouTube Ray Kurzweil and see how he justifies this. But
I mean, you could even argue that there's been an explosion in the gap between primates and humans.
Correct.
And even before that, like, you could make an argument that we're on that huge upswing.
Right. And so sort of part of his argument is that the difference between apes, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think what he says is the difference between apes and humans is that they just kept making the neocortex bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's what gave us these capabilities. But that took 500,000, a million years of evolution, whatever that is. So if you look at the progress there, it's pretty slow. And then 10,000 years ago, let's say 500,000 years ago, we discovered fire, and then 10,000 years ago, we started settling down and building farms. Then 3,000 years ago, we were building pyramids. Then the time of the Romans, I mean, we had aqueducts and we had some pretty sophisticated type stuff. 500 years ago, we developed calculus. We were looking at the moon with Newton. Not the moon. We figured out that we were a heliocentric solar system. And now, and then you look at, was it 1900? The average life expectancy was 48 worldwide. Now it's 78. It's just like, you kind of look at these different. It's faster. The rate of growth is faster and faster and faster. That ties into Moore's law. You know what Moore's law is?
Is that where there's basically an endpoint of the amount of basically storage, not necessarily storage, but like computing process that you can get?
Yeah. So Moore is. I don't know.
You can explain it because I don't know it too well.
1960s or so. This is way back when computing was first getting off the ground. The guy Moore, I guess he was a researcher. He called it Moore's law. Basically, that it seems like that computing power will double every 18 months, and he's right on the head. Every 18 months, computing power has doubled, and what you're talking about is there's a physical limit that Moore's law will reach. We're not there yet, but we're getting pretty close, and that's basically has to do with how close you can make transistors before it's physically impossible. It just gets too small. I believe that's about 6 nanometers between transistors, which is the little tiny microscopic things on a motherboard, which have billions and billions on them on a single motherboard. So
does Moore's law have built into it basically like this is as far as it can go? Or does he just say it's always going to double every 18 months?
He never gave a limit.
Okay.
But now that they're in Silicon Valley, they're finding out, wait a minute, 6 nanometers seems to be the physical limit. It has something to do with electrons. I don't know quite what that is, but it has something to do with, I think you start almost getting into quantum level at that point, which is weird.
But then at that point, yeah, like I feel like there could always just be that next stage. Like maybe they start figuring out how to do it at the quantum level, and
it's possible. Maybe there's a new way of configuring. I don't know. Maybe they have layers. I have no idea how that stuff works. But so I guess it is possible. There also seems to be. There are inherent limitations with classical computing. Even with, then you'd have to ask yourself: is making transistors closer together the best way to even do it? And so that, I think that becomes another issue itself. Should you just keep, it's going to take more and more manpower, more and more money, more and more everything else. Does it even make sense to just try and get transistors closer and closer and closer together? And probably not, honestly. But
how do we get on the topic of Moore's law?
We talked about how just kind of artificial intelligence seems like a natural evolution of.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. And so we're at so it seems like we're sort of reaching this level, according to Ray Kurzweil, we're reaching this level where the pace of acceleration is happening so quickly that the only way to stay on that exponential curve is to sort of merge with machines.
Right.
And that's sort of what artificial intelligence seems to be doing. And it gets back to what you said before about, do you want to make them human-like? And I'm like, I don't think that's the goal. I think people who want that as the goal, I think are maybe not seeing it correctly. I think you just want to take the strengths of what artificial intelligence machines can do, and you want to merge them with what humans do well. But I think there's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy there, in that the only way to learn how to make an artificial intelligence machine do something that a human can do is to study what the brain does well. And I think that's I was texting you some of the stuff about the Jeff Hawkins podcast with a guy named Lex Friedman. He has a really good artificial intelligence podcast. He has a specific podcast interview. It's about 2 hours or so with a guy named Jeff Hawkins, who's a neuroscience researcher. And he has some interesting theories about how artificial intelligence specialists, machine learning specialists, deep learning specialists can sort of take away. He has something called thousands brain theory that can take away what his research is, like basically what he's researched. There are takeaways that are applicable to artificial intelligence and making them more human-like in some ways.
So right now, that sounds like a good solution for us. Just merge with AI, and we'll be safe for a little bit. But don't you think that AI will at some point be like, these things are just useless to us, that they're just kind of like humans are just bogging
We're
AI
useless
down?
to them.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a creepy story about Facebook. Facebook, I don't know if you know this. This is a couple of years ago. They had AI bots, chat bots, and the AI chat bots sort of went out of protocol, and they created their own freaking language, and they started talking to each other so that the humans couldn't understand them. And so Facebook shut it down. I was like, "That's fucking weird."
Yeah.
So it's like that was in like 2016 or something. And so I think you're right. Like when you're dealing with stuff that's far more intelligent than you, you got a problem on your hands. And I think that's what Elon Musk has been talking about for a long time. It's like, hey, like we're gonna build this thing, and then people, pundits might say, oh, well, you can just shut it off. Well, if I'm 1,000 times smarter than the human, I'll figure out a way that I could stop him from shutting it off.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think that's a real problem. I think that's why the smart people are the ones like Elon Musk saying, hey, look, we got to think about AI, like trying to clone humans maybe is not the way to go. Like, let's think about the design function of AI. And I mean, does AI value kindness? Does AI value maximizing human utility? Because then you're getting into ethics issues. You could make an argument that maximizing human utility. Let's just say you have the world's best optimization algorithm, use quantum computing so that you can scale the shit out of it. What if that is objective? What if it is objectively true that in order to maximize human utility, get human kindness, stop world wars and have human prosperity across the board, and we could be this intergalactic civilization, but you got to kill 2 million people. What do you do? And then the AI machine says, no, this is what you told me to do. You told me to maximize human utility. It seems like a good idea. So, do you program it to have ethics and say, no, we got to maximize kindness? Well, how do you measure kindness? And so these are the kinds of things we intuitively understand that AI does not. And so I think that what's missing is that how do you encode wisdom?
It seems like these are things we need to objectify before we can.
Yeah, how do you encode wisdom? Right. And so, like human wisdom is something that, okay, you can have this kind of goes back to the Jeff Hawkins thing. It's like he talks about how there's 3D reference frames that concepts are sort of embedded in, and that essentially electrical impulse. So when neurons communicate with each other, they need to travel through 3D space, because that's how the brain knows and operates, is through 3D space. But that can be applied to concepts too. Like if I were to take my finger, for example, I could go horizontally and say, well, a finger is a part of a hand. A hand is a higher level of abstraction. A finger can be broken down to smaller levels, more specific type things, like I was talking about the artificial neural networks. Well, I have like my fingernail, and then I have these little wrinkles on my hand. But then that gets complicated, because I could take the concept of a finger and then tie that to a reference frame of the Finger Lakes. It's completely different than a hand. But what makes it like the Finger Lakes? It's the shape of these lakes. Like a computer would not have an easy time making that connection, whereas you and I understand that very easily. And so Finger Lakes, well, there's water there. It's deep, and there's all these attributes and these features, and you can endlessly tie features and attributes to each other. And so I think that that's kind of the idea behind 3D reference frames, is that everything's kind of connected to everything. And according to him, these reference frames have thousands of other reference frames that connect to it. And so it's more of like this moving blob of like neural connections and that move across different layers of abstraction. And his theory is that there's a common cortical algorithm. So the neocortex makes up 75% of your brain. I'm teaching the neuroscientist here, but I'm sure you know this stuff, but it makes up about 75% of your brain. And according to Jeff Hawkins, again, I'm quoting him because I'm not the expert, it's sort of the same material, more or less. And it's sort of just like this, kind of like a folds. I don't know. But it looks all the same. And the only difference between why a certain part of your neurocortex would be processing visual information versus audio information.
It's just the stimulus to it.
It's just what it's connected to. Mm-hmm. And so there might be a common cortical algorithm that actually it all does the same thing. Whether you're making sense of whether you're doing a mathematical problem, whether you're trying to figure out, does she like me? Or, you're trying to, you see a bear over there and you're thinking about, wow, that thing could really maul me. Like maybe that's all the same underlying algorithm. And so his whole thing is, hey, there's something here that's like, if we're going to try to take what's we're pretty good at building machines that do things that humans can't do well. What we're not doing well, and I still, again, I'm not the expert, but I genuinely do not believe that we're making huge strides towards mimicking any kind of real, it's called general artificial intelligence, AGI, artificial general intelligence. It's not there. I mean, like where Alexa's cool.
You're talking like the Ex Machina type thing. Did you ever see that movie?
I think, was that the one where she escapes from the?
Yeah.
I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like the artificial. That's
like artificial general intelligence.
That kind of stuff.
And so you start getting into emotions and weird things like that.
Do you think we're kind of far away from that right now?
Yeah. Like I don't think we're close. I think that's why I'm interested in the Jeff Hawkins of the world, the people that aren't really being listened to, because that are trying to speak to the machine learning, AI community. Because like, how do you do what a human does well? How do you program that and encode that without studying the actual real thing? Mm-hmm. It doesn't, like, the brain does not seem accidental. Like there seems to be some like design and structure and architecture. Like there's stuff to be learned and gleaned from that. And I would bet that Google and IBM, like the really high end, I'm sure they're doing that. But I would say for some of these startups, maybe that's not a bad way to look for some innovation.
Have you heard of simulation theory?
Is that where we're just in a simulation?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. So, but
kind of like the Matrix, but like, less scary, I guess. But basically, the way there's this guy named Nick Bostrom who I've listened to on a few podcasts.
Sounds familiar. Okay.
Yeah, he talks about simulation theory and basically how if you have a technically mature civilization, so say humans in 3,000 years, if we don't get wiped out by whatever, us being stupid and nuking each other or something, if we can,
you're being optimistic there.
Yeah, if we can become technologically mature and maybe even colonize our own solar system,
sure.
Have these, he talks about planetary sized computers that could just run unlimited amounts of computing. Basically, he's saying, with the universe as big as it is, the chances of us being in like a base level reality are very slim, because if there was ever a technologically mature civilization, they would have had the capability to run these simulations that would
Correct.
be indistinguishable from reality.
Right.
So if you have this planetary sized computer that can run, all of human civilization,
sure,
in 1,000 times over
right.
in 1 second,
right.
Like there would be basically countless simulations out there, and the chance of you being in the base level would just be so small. I think Elon Musk talks about it as well. He says the chance that you're in base reality is something like billions to one or something. Or yeah.
So I'm gonna throw out that Lex Friedman artificial intelligence podcast again. And what Lex does, it's a great podcast if you want to learn about artificial intelligence on any basic level. Even it's how I've been learning a little bit about it. But he asks every interviewer, including Elon Musk, that exact question. So he asked all of them. That's the one question he asked: is are we in a simulated reality? So if you want to get a bunch of answers, just keep listening to each one of those episodes. I don't know the guy. I just like the podcast. But
what's the general take by his guess?
A lot of them seem to think yes.
Yeah.
Or like it's definitely like a lot of it's possible. I mean, especially when you start getting down to the quantum level, you start seeing that everything's just freaking information. Like, have you heard of the observer effect?
Explain it, because I feel like I have, but I don't.
It's related to something. If you want to learn more about it, it probably explain it better than I can. I'll do my best attempt. It's go to YouTube and type in double slit experiment, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But essentially, electrons, photons, atoms. When you start getting to the very, very small, you start seeing something called wave particle duality, which is very freaking weird behavior. And the double slit experiment is you can picture there's a wall behind you, right? And so actually this is kind of good. You have a slit and a slit there. Oh, well, I guess the camera can't see it. But picture two slits. If you were to shoot particles, right? So particles is matter. You shoot them through the slits. Like, let's just say marbles, little marbles. This is how the video explains it too. You shoot one through the left slit, the right slit, left slit, right slit. Over time, you're going to see a pattern on the wall on the other side of those slits that make two bands, right? Like long bands. So if electrons, for example, are particles, which was what always was what assumed, you would assume you shoot the electrons through the slits, and it's going to make this band pattern on the wall. Okay. Now let's back up and talk about light. Right? Light is a wave. You shoot light through the two slits. What happens is it goes through the slits and it kind of interferes with each other. Right? Like the what do you call it? The crest of the wave, the top of the wave, they hit each other and they make this. It's called an interference pattern, where it looks actually. Is that also recording?
Yeah, you can.
It actually looks quite exactly like this, which is really weird. You're gonna have like very concentrated areas where the tops of the wave meet, and then you're gonna have canceled out parts of the wave that like are kind of. You're gonna get a wave pattern.
Right.
Okay. So what's strange is when you add a detector, like by those slits where the electrons pass through. Let's say they have little electron guns. Okay. These are real things. I think they're particle guns or whatever they're called. A photon or an electron, some very small particle. You put a detector at the slit. What do you call it? So let me see if I got this right, just so I don't screw it up.
Sure.
It's the wave. I believe when you don't have the detector there, you put light through it. It acts like a wave. Okay. Now, you have these same photons, which they're light particles. You put a detector there, it starts acting like a particle just by putting the detector there.
So the observer effect is basically whenever you look at it, it does something different.
So it's a wave function. So actually, that's what quantum entanglement is basically in a quantum state, something that's unobserved or unmeasured is a wave of probability. That's what it is. It's not a particle in physical space. So it could be. So that's how quantum computer works. In a classical computer, you have bits, right? They could be 0 or 1. In a quantum computer, they are 0 and 1 at the same time. Yes, and so that's where you can get exponential computing power through that. But that's the idea: is that it exists as a wave. Electrons are a wave of probabilities until the wave function collapses when it's measured. The act of measuring the electron or the photon makes it into a particle. It chooses a physical space to. That's
not wild. Like, what changes with it when it like how does it change? Just because
why does it change? So Sean Carroll is a physicist. He was on the Joe Rogan show, and I tried to get a good understanding of this. He says Sean Carroll says that the actual act of measuring is what it chooses. Like it's he talks about many universe interpretation. Basically, that it could go through this slit or it could go through that slit. It could go through one or the other, right? A wave is going through both and colliding with each other. The particle can only go through one or the other. According to Sean Carroll, this is the many universes interpretation, that many worlds interpretation, that in this universe, the electron happens to go through the left or happen to go through the right. But in a parallel universe, the universe splits, and in another parallel universe, it went through the right. And so he's saying that it is quantumly entangled. The electron becomes quantumly entangled with the actual detector itself.
Huh.
I don't know. That's just what he says. Like I said, YouTube it. But it's pretty wild because quantum computers are weird. They have to be in you have to have it in near absolute zero conditions, negative 460 degrees, whatever that is. They cannot operate under normal room temperatures. You have to have them isolated from heat, isolated them from environment, because any little single wave, sorry about the table, any single wave can basically what's called collapse the wave function, and the quantum what do you call it? The qubits, they're called qubits, no longer act like 0 and 1s at the same time once you collapse that wave function. You want them to be waves, 0, 1s at the same time. You don't want them to be particles that can only be 0 or 1. So the conditions for quantum computers, you have to have them in very, very cold conditions. You have to isolate them into these really complex ways. And even then, you're still getting what's called, I think it's called decoherence, where it's basically some outside variables interfering with it being a wave. And that's what it's a problem with quantum computing right now. It's just...
So that's for every single electron. Is it like that if you measure? So then physics itself makes just an argument almost for infinite universes.
Yes. Yeah. And are you familiar with... Well, so quantum entanglement's creepy because when I talk about how they're... so what quantum entanglement actually is when electrons come into close contact with each other, they actually affect each other. They don't stop affecting each other. In other words, you could take two electrons that are close together. The theory is that you could take one electron, if they are ever entangled, they will forever be entangled. So the 5th grade way of explaining it is if you have a red and blue makes green, right?
Purple.
Red and blue makes... Sorry, I'm tired. Red and blue makes purple, okay? And if you had a red and blue... You have red electron and a blue electron. They both become kind of purple, okay? And you separate these two electrons across the universe. They're still intimately connected with each other. If you add a little bit of yellow to one, the other one will become a little bit yellow. That's kind of the 5th grade way of explaining it. The reality is that it's about spins. So when they're entangled, they're affecting each other's spins ever so slightly. You separate them. If you tinker with this electron spins just the same amount in the other direction.
So you still influence these other universes.
Or I don't know about other universes potentially. Mm-hmm. But the fact that you can be on other sides of the universe and have that instant sort of connection. Einstein called that spooky action at a distance. Basically, he said the fastest thing is the speed of light. He's like, that can be possible because nothing's faster than the speed of light. I proved it. Well, it turns out something else is happening.
Jeez.
Yeah. So
this stuff's like way above my head. I mean, the way you're explaining it makes sense to me.
I'm trying to, but it's like...
Yeah. No, like this makes sense, but just whenever I try to just sit down and think about it myself, it's such a mind
fuck.
Yeah.
We don't Richard Feynman, if you ever want to pretend to understand quantum mechanics, you can try to listen to him. He was
I have him on my to-read list. Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. It's like one of the books I have to read, but I haven't read it yet. So.
Okay. Yeah. He says if you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't. Like that's and he's like one of the premier researchers on quantum theory.
Do you think we, as humans, with our brains limited as they are, we can ever understand?
No, I think they're limited as they are for a reason. Like,
yeah.
I mean, is that where you merge with machines? Like that they can. I think Russell Brand has something kind of interesting he says about it, that, he kind of makes the argument for why you should do drugs and things like that. Like, yeah. I mean, he has an interesting perspective, though. He says we're limited by our 5 senses in many ways, not just the capabilities of our brains.
The drugs he would be talking about would be like psychedelics type stuff, right?
Psychedelic type
like
stuff.
LSD or psilocybin, things like that I've heard stories as well where that can take you to.
Heard stories?
Yeah. Where that can take you to, like these places that just... you didn't know existed.
If you go to a Joe Rogan YouTube channel and you read the comments, it's, have you tried DMT?
Yeah, Joe Rogan always talks about DMT.
Yeah. He'll be talking about like monkeys and apes. He'll be like, yeah, but what if you gave it DMT?
Yeah, exactly. Jeez.
But yeah, so we're limited by our senses, and we're also limited by the size of our neocortex. If Ray Kurzweil says, and I think he's right, is that if the difference between us and more primitive mammalian species is that the size of the neocortex just got bigger, well, then we're limited by our skulls. Like, the skulls can all be so big before it's not feasible for... Can't be walking around 400-pound skulls. You'd have to have a body that could...
elephant or something.
You'd have to have... What?
I said unless we turn into elephants or something.
Yeah, but then you'd have to have a body that would need more food, more resources just to... Yeah, it would be crazy. So, the idea that we're limited by the skulls and how big the neocortex can be, can only handle so much computation, and certain types of computation we're very bad at. And then also we're limited by our senses. It's like, well, we can only see, hear, smell, taste, feel. So I think that there's a lot more out there that we just simply possibly can't explain without augmenting the actual human condition, the body, and what we can sense and what we can process.
Yeah. Well, so what's the big like takeaway for us? Like what do we get out of learning this kind of thing? Like does it change our day-to-day life knowing these quantum changes and spins and all that stuff? Like does that change anything for us, or does it just, we just contribute to that next layer of evolution?
Yeah, I think for the average person, and like you and I, and I don't think it makes much of a difference that we know this stuff. But if you can nail the quantum computer, I think that's huge, right? Like, so it's what it's not necessarily what the physics are, but it's what the physics can be used for to enhance the quality of life for people.
But there is some sort of like instinctual drive that makes you want to learn more about this kind of stuff,
Yes.
and like see if like,
Because you're getting closer to truth.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
almost like you're wanting to attach some sort of meaning to it, but
Sure.
like, so you want to just keep learning more and more about it. To me, it feels instinctual. It doesn't feel like
Right.
the same way I go about learning, what bacteria are infecting like an open wound or something. Like it's
Right.
different. It's a different layer of knowledge.
Right. Well, I think since the dawn of time, I wonder if I always wondered if other mammals had similar type feelings about, or is this unique to humans that we search for meaning and we search for our place in the universe? And before technology was, common, like, you look at the Mayans, you look at the Incans, you look at even cavemen, like there's drawings on the cave walls that show like they were inspecting this stuff. They were introspectively trying to figure out, who am I, why am I here, and all these kinds of things. So I think that you're right, that it's very inherent in humans, and like I said, I wonder if it's inherent in other animals. And so, for most of human history, people used religion to explain why things happen, their place in the universe, the context for why they're there, relative to everything else that's around them. And I think that searching for truth and meaning is something that's very instinctual, very inherent. So when you start talking about quantum mechanics, for example, I think I don't remember who said it, but they said a lot of quantum physics researchers are actually spiritual. There's a reason for that. Like there has to be a reason. You're going to study those complex formulas and crazy levels of math that I couldn't even start to wrap my head around. You got to have a motivation for doing so. And, you're not getting paid $100 million a year to do that like you are a movie star. So the motivation has to come from somewhere. And I think that's the search for truth, the search for meaning, and having some sort of objective lens through which to sort of try to discover that.
Yeah. No, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah.
I think with religion too, like we don't know where all this.
Oh, we don't.
You don't know where it all stemmed from. Like,
Right.
did somebody know this kind of stuff and
Right.
just started telling people, and then that's like what started the religion, or like,
Right.
that's kind of far fetched. But like, where do things, why do people attach to certain religions like that? Is it
So
more for meaning, or?
yeah, I think it's for meaning. I think it's for hope. I think people need hope. Like, we're such puny, and I say we, every single human being, no matter how smart or lack thereof, or how capable or lack thereof, or how rich or whatever, we're all pretty puny and insignificant in the grand scale of the universe. So we all know that we can only do but so much. And for those, I think especially that need, that maybe have, especially those that would have an external locus of control, those that maybe don't rely on hey, I can't change the world, or like they don't believe they can. I think most people, believe it or not, I don't think they have this, I can just go out and change the world. I think very few people have that. Even those people know that they're pretty limited. Mm-hmm. So it's like, well, you look to some external source of like hope and hoping that your life can turn out okay, your kids can turn out okay, and that there's some God or deity or something looking over you. But then also, so I think it's hope. I think everybody needs hope. I think Obama was elected because he campaigned on hope. And I think meaning, like, I can't just be this, like, that's why existentialists, if you've ever read some existentialist type stuff, where the guy was Gregor Samsa, he wakes up as a bug one day, and it's like an existentialist kind of novel, and it's about how life is meaningless, right? And that's a very depressing kind of thing, to just think we're here and we're just these meat machines and we die and that's it. And so I think that people look for something more because it's comforting, and I think that I think there's an inherent need for truth. I think people like context. Like, they want to know how they relate to the things around them. And I think that they turn to religion for hope. And I think that religion is much more about why than how. I think almost everything in science to this point has not in any way contradicted religion.
It's not necessarily disproving
No.
any sort of religion.
How,
or
not
anything.
why,
Yeah.
science. Quantum mechanics is weird because you start seeing like, oh, this seems purposeful. Weird. That's why a lot of them are spiritual, a lot of the quantum researchers, because it seems like, wait a minute, this is all just information. Little strings of information, string theory, right? Little strings of information. Little waves of probability. Probability, it's just information. That's weird.
Yeah.
Is that programmed? Like you said, the simulated reality. Is it just programmed? Like, is our creator just like this, like God who builds a cool video game and we're that?
And it's like, if there was, so say you're religious, say you believe in heaven. If we're in some simulation, why couldn't there also be a simulated heaven? You know, after that,
right?
Or, so it's like they're not mutually exclusive.
No.
Theories, principles, whatever.
Science is how, not why.
Yeah.
I have a very difficult time agreeing with anybody who's. You get some people who. So it's weird, right? Like South Park has an episode about this. South Park's always way ahead of pretty much everything. They had this one episode of where in the future there's different factions of atheists. There's like there's like a species of super advanced beavers that believe in one form of atheism, and then the humans believe in another form of atheism, and there's like a third breed, and they're all fighting with each other. Kind of, you could think about Judaism, Islam, and Christians, and throughout the years they war. But so it basically mimics that same type of thing. No, I believe in this type of science, and then they say hail science, or everything that you would say I pray to God, they say I pray to science. And so what you're starting to see is people who, I'm not sitting here saying I understand science very well. I don't think I do, but those that don't understand it at all, and I think are a bit ignorant, you could make the argument that those, that are very religious, you could make the argument that, okay, they just believe the Bible, and they just believe things kind of blindly. That's an argument. Okay. Now you could also say that there's people on the other side that say science. I saw a science, report, this and that. This is why it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, for me to believe these, just
right,
the observer effect. For me to believe that, I didn't specifically go and do those calculations and do the experiments. I'm taking that for granted that some researcher somewhere proved that and that. So it's the same thing with religion, like you're saying. Like, I'm just putting faith in that person to be correct about it.
Right. And well, I mean, the thing about science though is
you can keep
replicating.
Yeah, you can do more iterations of it.
And you do more iterations. And so, but it still goes back to the idea that it still doesn't explain why things are the way they are. And so when people search for meaning, they're asking why, not how. Mm-hmm. Right? Like science just explains how, not why. And I think at the very end of that South Park episode, one of the kids who is rational is like, hey guys, you guys should stop fighting because religion explains how, not why. And then, of course, it's in South Park fashion. They go, no, that's not right. Rabble. But it's like, no, it's exactly what science says. It explains how, not why.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting stuff. Yeah. And it would be really cool to learn more about it. I don't know. I don't know where to go, I guess. Do you start with podcasts like you do? You listen to Lex Friedman and people like that? Or how do you start to get a good grasp of what these concepts are?
I mean, I wouldn't even say I have a good grasp of these concepts. Right now, I think what you start getting into is one thing I'm super interested in. We might have talked about this. Is I was a tutor, when I was back in college, and I've still kind of done it like on and off since. And I think that human learning is inherent. Like the way that they teach you how to learn things, like how to learn, I think is just bad. Like even in the world's top universities, like rote memorization. And then you start learning something like physics, and they'll start teaching you motion, and they'll start teaching you like these basic level building blocks. To me, I have a theory, and I would like to try and test it out on myself. Maybe I'll learn programming or something. Right? We were talking about that. Mm-hmm. Pick a topic that maybe not be easy to learn, and I think that having a higher level idea of what for example, deep learning is a subset of machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. Like having an idea of the map of how different concepts in a given domain connect. You might not even understand, like I get quantum entanglement, but I have absolutely no idea how to calculate any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I get the concept of quantum entanglement on some level.
So do you think say
like learn the map of like learn the landscape, and then start like picture like your 5 like, think of it this way. If you wanted to know more about the world, right? You'd look at a world map or a globe, and then you'd say, wait, I want to go to India. And then you'd zoom in on India and you'd go. And then you'd learn the little stuff there. It's like trying to learn about the entire world by just going to India first. It's like, no, learn the landscape, and then you learn where India is in relation to China, in relation to America. And like, you can kind of see how the pieces connect, on a geographic standpoint, but you can take that and apply it to any sort of domain or anything you're trying to learn.
So to put that on a different scale, do you think that the timeline is important as well? Like, so say I want to learn how an MP3 works. Do you think I have to go the whole way back and learn how a CD works versus how a cassette works versus a record? Do you think you need to learn those building blocks to get to that concept? Or do you think you can just jump right in and understand that this is how,
Well, that's a good question. So it depends on what is the purpose of you learning it. If the purpose of you learning it is so that you can just upload it to the internet, then no, you don't really need to know that stuff. But if the purpose of you learning it is you're a sound engineer and you're trying to manipulate, I don't know, I guess they take different sounds and they put them together, they splice them. Do you need to know how CDs work? I have no idea. But like, what are you trying to get accomplished, right? If you're trying to learn quantum mechanics, on my level, I'm never going to become a quantum physicist, but I would like to learn how quantum computing works, because I think that there could be some applications in 5 or 10 years that could be really interesting that I could maybe jump on. And so I would probably need to some level of programming and artificial intelligence, and then passively learn quantum mechanics, and specifically how the parts of quantum mechanics that apply. So it's like, well, what if I want to become a quantum physicist? Well, I still think you got to learn the domain of quantum physics in general, just a higher level type deal. Like, instead of just going in on day one and saying, like, that's why professors do make syllabi, is to give you a higher level idea of everything you're going to learn, sort of on a piece of. It's just not well done. Like, it's just, here's everything you're going to learn, but without context, without explaining it. And so I think that to try and learn anything, you should like ask someone who's in the field and like almost have like a self-guiding learning experiment and just learn the different major concepts, modules, ideas. Because if you're doing this math problem and you don't know why you're doing it, like, what is this math problem in quantum mechanics? What does that relate to? Does that relate to the spin of the atom? Does that relate, like, what am I doing and why? You're going to learn much more richly and fully when you understand why you're doing something. And the only way to understand why you're doing something is how does this fit the bigger picture?
So what would be your solution for the way education is right now? Would you turn things into more of these like apprenticeship type things?
I think that experiential learning is important. I think.
Do you think standardization is important? That all of the medical field, all the doctors should know the same baseline thing, like that you aren't necessarily going to get from these one-on-one just apprenticeship without going through schooling.
So I think that higher education probably does a pretty good job. And I haven't done the medical stuff like you've done, and maybe you could attest to this better than I could. But I think that higher education still teaches hard skills quite well. And so that's the stuff you're talking, baseline knowledge, like hard skills. It's generally either rote memorization or here's what you need to know.
So you think that stuff's still important, like the rote memorization and just things like that?
I mean, you got to be able to memorize things. I mean, if you want to read if you ever heard of the Memory Palace, that helps with rote memorization.
So you explained it to me before when we were living together, and then there's this really cool board study prep type thing called Sketchy Medical, where they basically build the Memory Palace for you. So it's not quite as good, but they'll build this picture, just wacky things in the middle of it, and they'll attach like some sort of meaning to it. So let me think of like an example would be like there's prostaglandins, which are just like these molecules in your body. The symbol for that in the Sketchy universe is a pro slugger baseball bat. It doesn't really make that much sense, right? There's no what's the connect there, but the PRO, prostaglandin, pro slugger. So every time you see a baseball bat in a Sketchy video, then you know that has something to do with prostaglandins. And then when you're on the exam, you can think of the picture in your head. You think, oh, okay, there was a prostaglandin baseball bat smacking a fire extinguisher, which means that it has something to do with NSAIDs, because NSAIDs are fire extinguishers. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just they build these palaces for you. Whenever you were explaining it to me, you were trying to say more of attaching it to things in your life that you already know. Like, so your own house that you fully know everything that's in that house. Like you could walk through it in your own mind
Yes.
pretty easily.
Yep.
And then you attach things to it. Like, so the couch means this, the
Yeah.
grandfather clock means this. That's kind of the way you explain it to me. I don't have the best like
I'm going to give you
interpretation of it, so go ahead and explain
I'm going to give you a good example. Let me just think for 1 second. So I'm going to give you a list of numbers right now, and I'm going to see how well you memorize it. Maybe you can memorize it all, but it gets to a grander point. Let's see. 07410911. It's kind of, you might be able to remember it, right?
Yeah, I already forgot it. 0741 something.
No, sorry. I think it was 12410911. Anyway, so as just numbers, when they're
that's why we have cell phones now. We can just punch that
exactly.
in.
And so that goes back to the argument: how important is rote memorization? That aside for a second, actually, what I named was the dates for Pearl Harbor and September 11th.
Okay.
1241 is December 1941, and wasn't it December? Or was it? I think it was December.
It was December.
December 1941, and then obviously 0911 9/11, and so you just remember it instantly. So easy. 1241 0911, and so
I think you gave me a 7 in there somewhere though.
Yeah, I forgot. I don't know why I thought July, but it was 1241 0911, right?
Yeah.
And so
that's the thing. You can also learn it better. You can also memorize it better if you do, instead of 41, if you remember 41, just, not even attaching it to like the date, but just because that's now one thing to remember is 41 versus 41, which is two things.
Well, if I know that Pearl Harbor, it was December 1941, I don't have to memorize 4 digits. I just have to memorize that it was Pearl Harbor and
something that you already knew.
And both are very emotionally connected in, like I talked about, these reference frames in my brain, and there's thousands of different sort of nodes almost pointing to it, or neurons, or whatever is in the brain connecting to these. It's not just a random number, but it's context and meaning of Pearl Harbor and September 11th. And so what these world memory champions do is they're not geniuses. They just have these. So basically they're encoding either meaning or visual. So with the memory palace specifically, when you use objects in your home. So to explain the memory palace, the basic idea is that you take a place you're familiar with and you know it like the back of your hand. If you were to actually take that information, like I'm talking every single little detail in your house, well, there's the window over there, there's a desk over there, there's a computer on top of that desk, even, right? And I know that's where my pencil sharpener is, to the right of the computer. That's like, if you were to just tell someone on a piece of paper and write it out, that's so hard to explain.
Yeah.
But something 3D, that goes back to the Jeff Hawkins thing, that the brain is essentially operating in a 3D space. And so that's where he goes to this idea of 3D reference frames. And so the brain is built. So
break that down a second. What does it exactly mean that the brain is operating in a 3D space?
So what he talks about is the brain is optimized to operate in 3D spaces. That's what I meant. Okay. So like, if there's a lion over there and the lion is running towards you, the brain can instantly know, okay, I need to run at this angle to avoid it, or at this speed.
But this is only with regard to visual cues. So what about someone that's blind or something? Their brain's not operating in a 3D space, would they?
Well, not necessarily, because you're still moving to a 3D environment. You know that if you're listening. So I once went on this tour. It was called the Dialogue in the Dark. They don't have it anymore. It was in New York City, but it was awesome. I took a date there once, and what they do is you get blindfolded and you walk through recreations of New York City, like a subway, like a little subway, a fake subway, a fake supermarket, and you're blindfolded. You can't see a thing, and you learn how blind people process information. How do they cross the street? How do they find a subway seat? And so how do they know how much something costs, and like all these things that. It's quite fascinating in learning, and it turns out that like your other senses actually kind of pick up. So if you're trying to cross the street, you get very good at learning directionally where something's coming
just from. That short amount of time, you're like, while you were doing this tour,
I would say nice. Things like, it was kind of interesting how like your other senses pick up a little bit, but directionally, that the cars come. Even if you close your eyes and you're saying, well, the car's coming from behind me. Well, there's the depth associated with or the car's coming from above me, or the car's coming from behind me or next to me. There's still height, width, and there's still a 3D space. Mm-hmm. So the brain is optimized to crawl through these 3D spaces, whether it's visual or it's audio. Even think about if you're like Jeff Hawkins uses the coffee cup. If you're touching a coffee cup, you're still operating on a 3D space. So
Sure. Okay.
yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you in the middle of something else because I wanted you to explain that. But now I don't remember what you were.
We were talking about just learning and just sort of
the memory palaces.
The memory palace and how it works. So yeah, you're using the 3D space, which is something that the brain's already optimized to encode, and you can memorize it. We're like computers are very good at memorizing, like rote memorization and facts. We're very good at instantly, I guess memorizing or attaching meaning to a 3D environment operating within those spaces. Even think of something like, well, where did I put my keys? Well, if you put your keys in a certain space, there's an evolutionary reason to know where you put your keys. Because back in the caveman days, that might have been, where did I put my chicken?
Yeah.
Right? Where did I put my club so I can go beat the hell out of that other guy? Whatever, So you're basically leveraging what your brain already does well to memorize information more efficiently. And if there's the desk over there, on top of the desk is a paper, and next to the computer is a pencil sharpener. You can sort of encode things to memorize that would otherwise be done on flashcards. So you might say, well, I walk in, and so you use that same. So you journey through your house. You say, okay, I walk to the living room. I notice certain objects in the living room. I know where everything is in relation to everything else, and then I walk into the kitchen, and then I know that everything and where it is. So if I'm trying to memorize, one of the World Memory Championship tasks is to remember. They show you a deck of cards, and you have to memorize the deck of cards in order. And the best ones in the world can do it in a minute and a half, which is incredible. And so what they'll do is it's kind of interesting. They might use some form of a memory palace, but what's even more interesting is they attach personalities and like, so if they see the King of Hearts, they might say, okay, well, the King of Hearts is, they picture something that looks like King Arthur, but he has a giant heart-shaped shirt. And if the next one they see is the Queen of Clubs, then they automatically, like maybe the Queen of Clubs is always getting clubbed, hitting with a club, or she has a club in her hand. So if he sees King of Hearts and Queen of Clubs, he sees that visual right there. So he's like encoding, he's not thinking King of Hearts, Queen of Clubs in sort of a rote memorization flashcard type way, but he's actually visualizing these sort of assigned visual personality trait type. And even interactions, he's using interactions to encode information as well. Because we can remember things like, if I were to tell you your brother's John, right? And I say, John talked to Lauren, and he said this, and that. I could probably tell you that whole story because you know who John is, you know who Lauren is. Like it's already referencing things that you're good at. Like it's already instilled in your brain, embedded in your brain. But if I were to just tell you random people that you don't know, said random things about things you don't know about, that's closer to rote memorization. So it's encoding information and things you're familiar with in 3D space, but also interaction, personalities, things that are also emotion. You attach emotion to it too. So if someone's getting hit with a club, that's pretty memorable. Hurt. You associate that with pain, right? So
yeah, I mean, it almost sounds counterintuitive from the start because you're gonna have to attach all these meanings to things. Like you have to attach the meaning of this pencil sharpener means, Lauren or whatever,
Yeah.
And that seems like a pretty energy intensive startup phase to get all that going. Yes. But it takes advantage of your long-term memory.
Exactly.
Where you can store these things for a lot longer than something that would just be on a flashcard.
Exactly. So. There's a huge setup cost. Yeah. And that's working on your memory palaces. I did it a few years ago, and I should have kept doing it. I don't know. I guess I didn't see like a huge meaning. I don't know. I guess it's good for World Memory Championships. But I did work on, like, I guess it was about a week. And I did work on, like, using my old childhood home. And I tried memorizing, like, the first 200 numbers of pi. And I was able to do that, like, 2 to 3 hours. And I forgot it. But at the time, what I did was I used my house, and I would walk through the same path throughout my house to the living room. Notice I would go to the same corners, the same couch, the same everything every time I walked through the palace. But then the other thing I did was I actually used dates. So when I walked to my couch, for whatever, I don't remember exactly what the exact dates and everything I used. But let's say the first thing on my right is an ottoman, like an ottoman in a couch. I thought of what is it, 3.14?
15, something like that.
Yeah, okay, it was 3.1415. I would probably do something like 3115. I forgot what I did, but like I would associate meaning to 3115, maybe 31 days in March, and then like I don't know, half of the month is 15. I would march on the couch And then I'd picture myself marching on the couch, and I now know 3115. And like you could do that with strings of 6 numbers. So sometimes between 4 and 6 numbers, each object was sort of attached to that in a way. And so I did that. It took a few hours to memorize the first 200. I quickly forgot.
Are you writing this out like on a piece of paper?
I think I was doing it. I think what I had it on the computer, and I would record myself.
Oh, same.
I might even still have the recordings of me doing it. But I had the recording, see how good. And I kept, like, every time you do it, the first, the first 50 numbers, at first, the first 20 numbers are hard. Then it's really easy. Then the 50 numbers are hard. Then it's easy. And so that's, there's like a setup cost. But once you get that, you can encode information in your brain much more efficiently. It was pretty cool. I just wanted to try it out. And I'd forgotten my own memory palace, but it was cool.
Yeah, it's an super interesting concept.
Yeah.
I wonder if, I don't know, that this is such a random thought. I wonder if like photographic memories work similarly. I guess probably not.
I don't have a photographic memory. People think I do, because when I was young, 16 years old, I used to work at Friendly's, the restaurant, and I used to memorize people's orders, probably up to about 20 people. I could usually get with a pretty high accuracy, and I did not have photographic memory. I think I don't know exactly what my technique was then, but I have a good audio memory. Like I listen to things, and I like, it's weird. I can listen to things like when I would go to history class, I put my head down, and they think I was sleeping when I was listening because I like history. And
that's funny. It looks like you're sleeping in history class.
Serious, dead serious. They always put your head up, Kevin.
That's like such a like the classic like class you would think of that people are sleeping in.
Yeah. Oh, and I was tired. I was working at Friendly's. I told you.
Yeah.
Like, I used to work late nights, and but I memorize things better if it's just me. But if I like movies, I can't remember a goddamn thing that happened. I don't know. So I have a very bad visual, spatial sort of memorization of things that happen. I don't know why that is. But you could look at people. There's this one guy. Again, I don't know. Use Google. It's a useful tool for those of you out there. But if you haven't heard, but there's a guy. They flew him over like the city of Paris, and they flew him over once, and like he could memorize every freaking window and like every single building.
How does that work?
And he recreated it in a drawing. Like, it's wild. And so I have no idea how you could even begin. I couldn't even explain to you what was going on.
Yeah. Is that a short-term memory thing, or is that a long-term? Or is it just its own deal?
Idea.
Because you would think for it to be some sort of long-term thing, you would have to have meaning attached to.
You would think so.
Almost everything there.
You would think so. So I don't know how those people work. I can't even begin to. I have this one book. It's by the guy who won the world. I forget, Joshua something. It's called I believe it's called the Memory Palace, and he talks about how you can look at sort of people with like a lot of times somebody gets a stroke and it fundamentally changes their brain, and then all of a sudden they're very bad at one thing, but then they have these like savant like abilities, and so I guess neuroscientists study them to try to figure out what's going on there. And so like you think of Rain Man, for example, and I guess Joshua, I forget the guy's last name. I think it's Joshua though, his first name. And he talks about two savants. One is the guy who's actually the movie Rain Man was based off of, and then he meets with him, and then he also meets with another guy who has these savant-like abilities. They apparently in the 90s or the 80s, he was a child prodigy, and they try to figure out why he was able to do this stuff. This guy Joshua, who's actually started out as a journalist, wrote this book, but then he actually started competing for the World Memory Championships himself. And spoiler, he won. But he met with this other guy, not the Rain Man, but the other child prodigy who is now a grown adult. He guesses, he doesn't know for sure, that the guy, he just says he just has it in him. He had a stroke or something when he was very young, like a young child, and that gave him these abilities. The guy Joshua.
So a lot of this you think is more not necessarily a genetic thing you're born with. It's something that kind of, like you said, he got a stroke or some sort of environmental thing that
a lot of
turns
times
something on in your brain.
A lot of times these people with photographic memories, it's either that or they have some form of synesthesia. Synesthesia is where the senses mix. There's like this. Oh, that was the guy who said this is the guy where this guy Joshua, whatever his name is, the author of the book Memory Palace. This guy claims he has like synesthesia, so he can like do these math problems where he says the color, the number 6 is blue, and then he would assign personalities to these not assigned. It's just it was inherent to this savant. Like the number 9 is aggressive and it's red. And then so he would do these very complex mathematical calculations, mental math in his head, and he'd say it's weird. It's like so if you did 108,482 times 648,000 times 930, I couldn't even try to do that. It would be like this landscape of shapes and colors. That's how he explains it. And it has to do with the synesthesia, that your senses are sort of they're crossed. And so you're assigning visual sort of things like color or sound with the auditory sense to numbers. And numbers have a color, numbers have a personality, numbers have a sound. And this guy, Joshua, the author, Dufour or something, whatever his name is, kind of was implying that it might be bullshit. And we don't.
Well, I mean, it's so hard because
it's hard to believe.
I don't even know how you think, like in your own head. You know, the only way I can, like, I'm the center of my own universe. Like, I can't just get in your head and, like, for all I know, this blue cap could be red to you, but to both of us, it's called blue.
Right.
So it's just so weird that to try and actually really peg what's going on. You use like theory of mind to think what somebody might be thinking, but there's
no
really
way to really know.
Yeah.
That's just what the author, I guess, based on his training with the World Memory Championships and training hard, he was training pretty vigorously. He was sort of thinking that
it's just what would make the most sense.
This guy was using techniques that he uses, but he's trying to say it's a synesthesia. I don't know. That's just that was sort of an assumption. And then when he went with the Rain Man guy, he said there was no clear. He had no clear idea of what was going on inside there. I know the most famous example is a guy named Phineas Gage. This doesn't
with the big railroad spike through his head.
He didn't have any savant-like abilities, but his personality changed.
Yeah.
The other one that's interesting is if you go to YouTube, type in man with the shortest memory. You ever see him?
Mm-mm.
Freaking fascinating. He actually had a stroke, and he can only remember he only has a working memory of one given thought. Like, so this happened to him like 1980s, late 80s, or like mid 80s, something like that. So he's been living like this for 30 something years.
Does he remember past memories?
I think he can remember things before the stroke.
Okay.
But once that happened, his wife will come in and say, "Hey, honey, do you want waffles?" He'd say, "I love waffles." He'd say, he doesn't even remember his wife being there. He'd be like, "Why are you here?" And she, "You want waffles?" "Yes, honey, I love waffles." Once that like sort of thought is done, he didn't even remember anything about. He's like, "Waffles?" He's like, "No one's asked me for waffles in 30 years." He'd say things like that.
Oh wow,
it was crazy. So he can only remember. So the interviewer would come in like from Dateline or whatever the programming was, and say, "Yeah, it's nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too." And they'd start asking him questions, and then he'd be like, "Well, what did you think of me when I walked in the room?" He'd say, like, "I don't know. I just met you now." Like he could only remember. So
that would be so weird.
So and they asked him what it was like, and again, I recommend anybody to YouTube and watch it. It's absolutely fascinating. But he says they asked him what it's like. He's like, he says something along the lines of he's living in like this purgatory, like he's in this constant dream state of like that's how he describes it. It's just like it's a constant like he just lives in this dream state of you can't even explain what it was like. He's like it's like he almost suffers by it though. It's like a hell for him. But the weird thing is he can learn things. So he cannot memorize things or anything like that. But if he learns, like he can learn piano.
Oh, so he can learn like motor skills.
Yes.
And okay.
Yeah, but like so it has to do with working memory or something.
Yeah.
So you start looking at outliers, specifically people with strokes or get pulls to their brains, and that's how you learn more about the brain. And I think that's so the weird thing is that you can't go around and screwing with people's brains because that's mean.
Well, yeah.
And hopefully, maybe that's where artificial intelligence and quantum computing comes in, is that quantum computing will allow for you to get the scale to run brain simulations. You cannot possibly run a accurate brain simulation right now with classical computers. Like Google just achieved something. They put it in the news, I don't know, last week, 2 weeks ago. It's called quantum supremacy. Basically, quantum supremacy is it's a symbolic threshold where a quantum computer can do something better than a classical computer. Google claims that it did some kind of calculation. I don't know what it is, but it claims it did it in under 3 minutes. That would take a classical computer 10,000 years. because of the way that zeros and ones are at the same time. There's an exponential computing advantage to that. IBM then came in and said, no, that would take 2.5 days on a classical computer. But either way, you're going from 2.5 minutes to 2.5 days. That's still like, I don't know, 2,000 times more powerful. So you can't possibly simulate a brain because you can't, like I said, you can't poke everybody and poke their brains. But if you can simulate brain function because it's so complex by using a quantum computer to get that processing power, hopefully you can kind of tie that with artificial intelligence and figure out how the brain works. Learn more about how people learn, how we can augment the brain, things like that. So
I feel like we have some sort of bias being just in the present, though, in the fact that like saying things like that it's going to be really almost impossible to simulate an entire brain.
Right.
But thinking back, like when Watson and Crick discovered DNA, they would have said it's impossible to map the entire human genome.
Yeah.
And then that happened,
Yeah.
100 years later. I don't know the actual timeline, but
I'm glad you brought that up because this is what Ray Kurzweil talks about, exponential sort of like the exponential nature of human sort of, like collective human wisdom, right? In a sense.
yeah, because we sit here and we're like, oh, that's impossible. There's no way we could do that. But that's just because we don't have a concept of the technology 10 years from now.
Yes. Because according to Ray Kurzweil, our brains are programmed to think linearly. And he always uses the example of the lion on the mountain and saying, okay, in 3D space, right? Like in a 3D space, he's going to run this way. I got to run that way. We're thinking linear, day to day, week to week, but technology doesn't behave like that. So in the DNA, Watson and Crick, Ray Kurzweil goes into this very example. When the what is it called, the human genome project, right? When they were first sequencing DNA in the late 80s, early 90s, they were like 0.1% sequence the entire human genome. Then it was 0.2%. And then I think it was in the early 90s, they're like, dude, we only got 2% of the human genome done. This is nothing. And then all of a sudden, because of the exponential power of, I guess, the way that technology is sort of inherently, whatever technology they were using to sequence the DNA, it was like all figured out 100% by 2003. So in 1993, it's like, well, we got 3%, 4%. But because exponential inherently doubles, every year, every 2 years, you're not going linearly. You're not going 3%, 4%. Oh, it's going to take 100 years. No, it took, 10 years. And so when people talk about Barack Obama, people always say, well, what do you like about, what don't you like about him? The one thing I say is everyone talks about health, Obamacare, this and that, whatever your views are of the hot button issues. I always believe this. In 2012, he passed, I guess, I don't know if it was to Congress or if he just had an executive order or whatever it was, $100 million. He allocated $100 million towards the Human Brain Initiative, which is basically the sequencing of the DNA, the Human Genome Project version for the brain. And so far, this progress has been pretty slow. According to that guy, Jeff Hawkins, it's sort of picked up a little bit.
And it's going to be slow at the start.
Yes, because that's how exponential sort of graphs work.
Yeah, you're at a very slow and then whoosh.
Yes, and so if that same thing happens, quite interesting. Is quantum computing, I keep going back to that because I think that's where the processing power lies to simulate things like brains. Quantum computing is also, it's good for optimization problems. So quantum computing, how do you route traffic? Like optimized traffic so that there's never any traffic. If you're an airline, there's, I think, 300 as of July 2018. There's 314 cities with over 100,000 inhabitants in the United States. If you were to have an airport in each one of those cities, 100,000 is a pretty reasonable population to have an airport. Let's say one that optimize every single flight so that you make the maximum amount of profit. Well, at 300, you could have New York to LA to Chicago. Like there's an infinite number of combinations. As a matter of fact, you could optimize those 300 locations. There's more route possibilities among those 300 possible route combinations than there are atoms in the universe. Like the classical computers cannot possibly handle that. But because of the way that the exponential nature of quantum computing, you can actually work on problems like that.
So does it just assign weights to certain things? Like, is that how that works?
That's the artificial intelligence side of it. It's constantly readjusting weights to an infinite number of nodes.
So if you know that, LA to New York City is like a must, it's going to knock out all the other possibilities that wouldn't include that.
That's sort of, and again, this is, I'll admit my knowledge is very limited on this, but I think that's how the neural networks work, is that you're telling the neural network sort of the goal, and you're giving it the rules, and then you're saying, do your thing.
Yeah.
And then there's weighted connections between each layer of abstraction. And then each layer of abstraction makes up a bigger piece of the puzzle. until you get the holistic sort of end result. And so it is very much a weighted connection thing. And that's how backpropagation works. It gets the feedback based on what it learns, and it readjusts the weights at each sort of node to node connection at each layer of abstraction. And so again, it makes a lot more sense when you watch the videos from people who are teaching it, who know it way better than I do. Plus, you kind of need a visual of what that might look like. But essentially, quantum computing is good for optimization problems that are just too big for classical computers to handle. Even with artificial intelligence, it's still limited in terms of just pure processing power.
So going back to something we were talking about with just, people having different, when we were talking about the savants and people with photographic memories and just the entire heterogeneity of the human race, do you think that artificial general intelligence, if it ever becomes something, do you think that's going to be a very uniform thing, or is there going to be a bunch of heterogeneity within that as well?
That's a good question. Wow.
I guess we don't really have the
definition of artificial general intelligence is supposed to be that it's a all-purpose. It could do multiple. That's sort of the definition. So by definition, you would think that it could handle many of the things that a human can. And I think you got a guy like Andrew Yang who's campaigning right now, and he's talking about how automation, and I guess to some level artificial intelligence is gonna like put tons of people out of work. Well, that's great. It's weird because you start learning about artificial intelligence and what it could be doing, and you realize that only a few people are going to own all the machines that produce all the output that are going to then you could probably the theory is that what you do with 100,000 factory workers now could be done with 5,000 factory workers in 10 years. Mm-hmm. Well, the percentage of those profits, a much greater share is going to a smaller number of people. And if you listen to people like Bernie Sanders, agree or disagree with what he wants to do and why, the facts are the facts, that wealth inequality is going up very, very quickly, and since the 1970s. And so a lot of that could be treated to automation, artificial intelligence. If we're talking about exponential technologies, well, then will we have an exponential wealth gap growing? And so I think that artificial general intelligence is kind of scary, because if it's only a few people if it could do everything that a human could do, and there's only a few people reaping all the profits, well, it's it goes back to your question. Well, what is the purpose? And right now, it seems like there's most of the research that's funding it is profit driven, and I think that the way that we build these AI machines, we got to be careful with why are we building them, and if it's just for profits, we could run into some pretty dicey issues. So with AGI, I think that by definition, it's all purpose, but we got to be careful with that.
Yeah. So switching gears, but kind of on a similar topic of technology and just the future. I know you had mentioned, and we talked a little bit about virtual reality before.
Yeah.
Where do you see that going? Do you think that's kind of where, cell phones started out as these big things that you had to carry around, and everyone's like, no, I don't want one of those. I don't want one of those. But now 20 years later, everyone has a cell phone, and it's just part of you. Do you think that's going to be how virtual reality is? Because when you're looking at these devices, you're like, I don't want one of those stupid things on my face.
Sure.
It seems clunky. It seems,
like the Zach Morris cell phone. I don't want to carry this big thing around.
Exactly. But now, do you think 20 years from now, that's the new cell phone, and now everyone's got virtual reality, and that's just the thing?
No, I don't think it's an evolution of the cell phone. I think augmented reality could be. So just the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality. Virtual reality, you're in an entirely new environment, right? So you're putting on these glasses, you look around, and you see, let's just say you're in New York City, but in this virtual reality sort of headset, you're in the woods and you see a deer. So you're changing your entire surroundings. And the problem with that is that it can't replace cell phones, because you need, as far as I know, we got to be sort of, cell phones help us live a better reality in where we are. And before that, I guess there was just laptops, right? And they help us with our reality. And so augmented reality is sort of layering digital information on physical real world objects. So that's where you see like the Google Glass, and then there's Magic Leap glasses, Microsoft HoloLens. And so what the applications for augmented reality right now, which could potentially replace a cell phone, is you have these sort of glasses that they're getting smaller and smaller and more. They're almost starting to look like regular glasses. Very good for training, right? So if you want to train somebody how to do heart surgery, but you can't use a bunch of live human hearts. You can have a 3D, like you'd have a dummy, and then you can have, this is what Microsoft HoloLens, they sell to, research institutions, hospitals, like where or even, what do you call it, aircraft engineers, like where you need a 3D environment to sort of practice, like a sandbox. That's a pretty good application for it. So you're layering digital information, so it might be a 3D structure of the heart, and you can see where the right ventricle is in relation to everything else without tearing up a bunch of hearts. And so I think augmented reality, if you can go into a store and you have these glasses on, and, the goal is to reduce friction, right? I mean, it might not seem like a big deal, but right now it seems super easy. I could just go into a store, take out my cell phone. I could Google, I see a laptop at Best Buy that I might want to buy. I can Google it, see the Amazon reviews, and make a decision and to see the reviews and things like that. But that's still a lot of steps relative to what augmented reality could do. I have to take out my phone, unlock it, type in these steps. With augmented reality, with the glasses, so you have something. So this is where artificial intelligence is coming in. Is if you have computer vision, it can recognize the product just by looking at it. It processes, oh, this is the Apple MacBook Pro 2015 version, this model, or maybe there's a QR code that it recognizes, and the information can instantly overlay on top of the object and say, here's some of the reviews, and then you can say, Alexa, show me more reviews. You don't got to pull out your phone, and that's natural language processing, which is the Alexa. So it's all kind of integrated, right? But the idea is that it's they're removing steps to get the information that you want.
You could also do it like a grocery store or something. Say you need to get trick cereal or something, maybe your glasses could be like pointing you in the directions of where to
find it.
Yeah.
Right? Because this world is full of noise and we all just want signal. And how do we reduce the friction to get to that signal? And if you think about how you use a laptop, if I want to do the same thing with a laptop, I'd have to bring my laptop, make sure it's charged, bring it to the store, carry it, and then probably type it in, make sure, and then I have to connect to Wi-Fi, and then I have to open up Safari, and then the phone, of course, is a simplified, better version of that. And then so at each sort of iteration of what you would consider what cell phone technology does for us, what laptop technology does for us, it reduces friction to it reduces the noise and it reduces the friction so that we can get that signal. And that signal is often just the information that we're looking for, not the clutter, not the bullshit. If you're trying to look for a certain brand of cereal, well, everything that's not that box of cereal is just noise. And you want to get to that signal as fast as possible.
Do you think that in a way takes away from the individuality of humans? Like if we all have augmented reality glasses, and we all go to Best Buy, and the glasses are telling you this is the best laptop to buy for your price and all this stuff, then everyone's going to have that laptop. Same thing with if your augmented reality are telling you to buy these healthy foods.
I see.
Everyone's going to be gravitating to the same thing that the augmented reality is pushing you toward. And I feel like that might take a little away from individuality of people.
Interesting.
On like a larger scale, not necessarily with laptops and food, but
it's possible. I'll answer this question in two ways. One is maybe you're right, and maybe we're just moving towards like this collective intelligence where feedback from everybody is sort of combined into this sort of general consensus. And for many things, I think general consensus is a good thing. I think that general consensus is great for the roads, saying that, well, you have to drive on some side of the road, or generally speaking, I would say that reviews are pretty accurate for the most part. I think it's a good system. So maybe we are moving towards a collective intelligence, and that we might become more standardized as people in some ways. I'd say the counterpoint to that on some level is, yes, the information that's being given to us is the same, but the way we process that information is still a little different. But then you could, of course, make the argument, well, if everybody's fed the same information, you're going to more or less process that information the same. That's true. And so I think that's really fair, right? It's like, well, if everybody's just being fed the same shit, then and I think you are getting that. Like if you look at like the sort of polarization of politics in America and worldwide even, I mean, everybody's looking at the same news feeds. Like it's really weird how you're starting to have this like polarization of views. You either believe one thing or the other thing, left or right, Republican or Democrat. And it's like, I think you're right. Like, I think that there's a standardized way of thinking that's starting to emerge.
But that really took off once internet took off,
Yes.
once everyone was connected
Right.
enough to be able to.
Right.
But yeah.
So
Is it necessarily a bad thing, though? Like, could we all collectively come to the same good conclusions? Well, I mean, like, so the process right now is everyone is super split. And
Well,
like that didn't work with politics. I guess
Right.
everyone got split
Right.
super far apart. But could the opposite happen where everyone kind of comes together on the same general goals? Not necessarily politically, but just
bigger picture.
Yeah, bigger picture.
Yeah. Like, I think most people want the same things. I think we underestimate how malleable the human brain is. Like, the information that you're fed, not just on a news feed, but like your environment, your school, your neighborhood, your family, every interaction that you have, you're getting multiple points of data, and it's sort of instilled in your brain. You learn lessons, you learn, how to interact with people. So, but if you're being fed the same stuff, if you're spending hours and hours on a cell phone, you're looking at the same algorithms, you're standardizing the ways of thinking. And I actually think that's a problem, because you're not, like, I think a diverse, like, you talk about in a workplace, you want diversity. The race and the gender thing aside, you definitely want a diversity of mindset. You want a diversity of opinion. You want like the Go. I gave you the example before about how the world's best Go player was like, why did this computer just make this move? That's not common. That's not a common move in Go. And it turns out it was a brilliant move, because humans are somewhat limited in how we solve problems. And so if everybody's thinking the same way and the Go players are saying, this is the best way to play Go, well, clearly it's not. Right? But if everybody believes that, because that's what the experts say, and there's a standardized way to believe, I mean, if you think about even, if human genes were always standardized, we would never evolve, because there was never any differentiation. So there's something inherent about differentiation in anything that allows for experimentation. If you can't experiment with thought because everybody thinks the same, they can't think outside their own sort of standardized thinking pattern because of what they're being fed with these algorithms, I think that's an issue. I think you want more diversified thinking patterns, and I don't think I don't think the education system, where it's a very standardized way of teaching, I call it indoctrinating children, I think that's also contributing to this sort of ABC multiple choice type culture.
Yeah. So what's next for you now?
What's next for me?
Yeah. I know you've been tossing around some ideas with, your own innovation and entrepreneurial stuff. I don't know if you want to probably not get into too much of it, because just you don't want to get jumped by somebody, obviously, or, but, what's next for you big picture wise? What are you looking to do?
Well, like, I mean, the whole laundry store thing just ended a couple months, 2 months ago or 3 months ago, whatever it was, in August basically, and it's just turned November, so 3 months officially, but I was still doing stuff in August, so 2 months. And so, I mean, this artificial intelligence stuff's interesting, this quantum computing stuff's interesting. I'm not, I think people can watch this and tell that I have very limited knowledge still in this stuff, and but I think, like, I would like to position myself in 5 years to be pretty well versed in this stuff, even if I'm not the one coding and doing things like that. So I think a big part of what I'm talking about here is definitely building the skill sets that we need for the future, not just in the job market, but if I want to build my own business that utilizes the technology someday. So I think learning on some level, just basic level Python programming, which is what's used for a lot of this stuff, quantum computing and AI. And then on top of that, I drained my bank account, man, like just trying to live off of it for a couple of years. And I think I need to start working again, but I think hopefully can I work somewhere that I'm learning a lot about these technologies too. And potentially moving down to New York City. I've lived there a while. And that's kind of the plan. Miami, warm weather place, maybe Dallas, maybe Austin.
What's your big takeaway from New York City for anyone thinking they might want to move there, or, even move out of there? Like, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it?
I once heard a quote, something along the lines of, everyone should move to San Francisco, but move before it makes you too soft. And everyone should move to New York, but move before it makes you too hard. And so I think that's pretty good advice. Like, it's a tough place to live in terms of they're right. You get like a little you live in a little box for $3,000 a month or whatever. But you can definitely live there more affordably if you're smart. I would say that New York City is a trade-off, right? So for anyone that's thinking about moving there, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of culture, there's a lot of life. And so you're going there for the opportunity and for an experience. You're trading that off for quality of life in terms of bang for your buck, right? Like you're not going to have a house with a lawn and these things. You probably won't have a car. Even if you could afford it, it probably just doesn't make sense to have a car in many cases. I mean, people who make $200,000, $300,000 ride the subway there. And so, you never really know who you're going to bump into on the subway. And I would say that if you're going there, have the mentality, like you got to kind of, I don't want to say aggressive is the right word, but you got to stand up for yourself. You got to be assertive. You got to ask for things. You can't let people walk all over you because people are very savvy over there. You live in a place where everyone's bumping shoulders and elbows, and like really go after it. Like don't just be passive because people will take advantage and they will see that you're from out of town. Just hold your own there because that's the mentality. It's very dog eat dog. And that's the people who win are usually the most assertive and sort of, I don't want to say aggressive because you don't want to go that route. I'll give you an example. Like when I say it's sort of an aggressive place, eye contact in New York City is different. Like you make eye contact with a stranger over there, it's like it's provocative. And you go down to North Carolina to visit my mother, for example. It's like, oh, hello. I'm like, I see the guy staring at me from across the street. I'm like, what's this guy's problem? What's this guy's problem? And he says hello to me with a smile. What a weirdo, right? But it's just so it's very dog eat dog. And develop a backbone. If, like, for example, you go to McDonald's, you want an extra sauce. They're not going to give you extra sauce. Ask for it. Like these little things.
Yeah.
It's important.
So on the same lines, what kind of advice do you have for anybody that is thinking, they're thinking they want to start up a business someday, or they have these entrepreneurial things going on in their head? What kind of advice do you have for them, whether they're starting out or they've been in it for a little while?
I'm going to give a personal and a practical answer to this. On a personal level, I'll start with the practical. On a practical level, if you have an idea, ideas are cool, but sometimes they're not practical and they don't make sense. The cool ideas, that's art, right? But what makes it a viable business is, are you solving a pain point or a problem? So when I was in the entrepreneurship program at the U of A, Arizona, one of our mentors said, every day we walk into class, you say the same thing: earn a profit solving your customers' problems better than the competition. So you earn money. You can't be losing money. You got to solve problems, but for a specific customer, don't try to, and that's another thing. Don't just go after everybody. Don't try to be something to everybody. Usually the ones that win out are the ones that are attracting. They're making a product for a niche market. You're making something for bikers. You're making something for sports enthusiasts, boating enthusiasts, hunting professionals. Like you're going after a market with a need, and you think you can build a product or service that's better than that. And so that's like, make sure that that's the framework you're using and do it better than the competition, of course. Make sure you fit that framework, and then find a mentor, find someone who can really guide your thinking, guide your advice. And then the last thing I would say is, when I was trying to build that music tech business, the one thing I goofed on was trying to like include all these features. What I should have figured out was, what are one or two features I could build on this platform that solves 60 to 70% of the problems and pain points of a musician or a band. That's who we're trying to target, our customers. And I just wanted to build everything. It's like, no, build something really simple that you can easily iterate. It could be a low fidelity version. Find your first 10, 15 customers, get feedback, and they might say, well, add this, subtract this, I don't like this. And that way you're not spending a lot of money on something that might not work. And it's called, Mark Zuckerberg says, move fast and break things. And yeah, I would just say, just get something up like you did with this podcast and just keep iterating, even if it's low fidelity, and keep improving on it.
Yeah, absolutely. What was that place where you kept going to in State College? Like, it was like a little think tank.
Yeah.
Do you think those kinds of things help?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think so. I mean, there were college kids there, and a couple of them were a little arrogant, but like, So I had a slightly different experience. But I think in general, when I've joined those things, it's been pretty cool.
What do they do with you there? Like, do they walk you through stuff, or is it just like
No, that specific place was so you have something called co-working spaces, and then you have something called accelerator programs. So co-working spaces are just, you can usually pay, I mean, the one in Penn State was free. I'm drawing a blank of what it was called. Yeah. That was free, but usually in New York City, for example, in most cities, charge maybe $200 a month, $400 a month for a desk, and you can work there every day. Sometimes it's a little cheaper if you don't have a dedicated desk. You just want to pick whatever's available. But that's just like, they might have events. They have like coffee.
But how's that different from just going and doing work in the library?
It's not. If you're in a college campus, well, I guess the one thing would be like, for example, when I went to that thing at Penn State, it's like there's other people there that are working on entrepreneurial projects. So you meet them, you talk to them, you sort of have the same energy, the same goals, So
you can kind of bounce ideas off people.
You bounce off it. You might find someone who's like sitting next to you and he's a programmer and he likes your idea. And then all of a sudden he wants to work with you. Or maybe it turns out that the company that's working across from you is your customer. It turns out that, some of these places too, since they specialize in helping startups, they might know somebody who's an investor. So those are co-working spaces, but accelerator programs are, you have to be accepted into these things. You have a little bit more of a formalized business plan. You have a team, and they're going to be mentors. They usually take a little percentage of equity, like 5%. They sometimes give you a little startup capital or living expenses, and you're going to work every day, and they're working hands-on with you. And it's more of a, let's help you make this a real thing, like and get real customers, versus a co-working space, which is, you don't even have to be working on a business. It could be you're a freelance designer. Could be anything that you're just kind of a freelancer, and maybe you're a small stage startup and you just want some cheap office space.
Nice. So, yeah. Well, this was fun. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we call it quits?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think we pretty much covered everything. It's kind of interesting.
Is there anything you want to plug or promote to the audience?
No, not at this point.
Yeah. All right. No Instagram or anything.
No, just good.
Yeah. All right. Well, it was a pleasure. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, man.
See ya.
Alright everyone, thank you all for tuning in. Please track us down on social media. Our Facebook is Insights of All Trades. Our Instagram is @InsightsOfAllTrades. Our Twitter is @IOAT Podcast. And you can find us on Gmail. It is insightsofalltrades@gmail.com. So please just send us in your insights. It would mean a lot to us and a lot to everyone else. Meaning, send in any tips or tricks you've learned through your trade or your passion that you think everyone would benefit from knowing. So until next time, adios.